Hey guys, my name is Chris if you didn't already know, and welcome back to another random video of mine. I know, I'm doing another one. You're shocked? Me too. This time I'm going to talk about my other James Bond theory. If you remember, I did one years ago about a theory, which I'm kind of forgetting what I talked about on it. What did I say on that? Oh yeah, I remember now. Totally different theory. Because the one I've got in my head, it's a little far-fetched. You have to open up your mind for this one because, like I say, it's a bit of a reach. And this theory has to do with the fact that James Bond has been going on for so long and he's changed appearance. So how is that possible? Hear me out. So let's start with the original, Sean Connery. And he was James Bond. I say it like that because, you know, his name is James Bond. That's what he was born with. And that's who he became. He became 007 James Bond. So we saw his James Bond from Dr. No all the way through to You Only Live Twice. And this is where my theory kicks in. Because in my head, sort of, his James Bond retires. He's like done with the Secret Service, or you know, he got promoted and went further up the chain, and so the position of 007 was left open. So instead of just bringing in a whole new name, they thought, oh, let's use the name James Bond as not the character but the position, sort of. I'm finding it very difficult to explain what I'm trying to say. Okay, so they pulled in this new guy and said to him, look, you're going to be 007, your name is now James Bond. And he's just like, okay then. And to sort of back up my theory, this James Bond at the beginning of On Her Majesty's Secret Service gets into this big fight, and he says, and it's not an exact quote, but he says, this never happened to the other fella. Which could imply that there was another James Bond, the proper one. Sean Connery. And to further up my theory about this is, at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, James Bond gets married, but his wife is murdered right at the end. And you know, he's like in pools of tears and being really soppy, and it's one of the reasons I don't like that film. So, the spy people... The spy people? What? Okay, what I was trying to say was, the people back at the Secret Service, like M, they think, oh no, we need to find out where Blofeld is because he's the one who killed James Bond's wife. So they rehired the original James Bond, who came back in Diamonds Are Forever. So he went into revenge mode for the other James Bond, who... sadly, he never returned because he was that upset over the death of his wife. You still going with this theory? Because I think I'm losing it. Of course, Sean Connery, as James Bond, said, you know, I'll only do it this one last time, but you're going to have to find another person to fill that role. Which they did in Live and Let Die with Roger Moore. And so he started going through his stories, and I'm trying to remember which film it was. I think it was For Your Eyes Only, I think it's at the beginning of that film. We see James Bond at his wife's grave. I keep doing this. And all of a sudden Blofeld shows up out of the blue. We've not seen him for many movies. And he chases after him with his helicopter, and eventually James Bond disposes of him. My theory on that bit was they knew Blofeld was looking for a James Bond. They don't know, or he didn't know, that they'd changed the person playing or being James Bond. I'm confusing myself now. What I'm trying to say is that they knew that Blofeld was looking for James Bond, so they had the current James Bond go to the graveyard to sort of get Blofeld to come out and chase after him so they could get rid of him. It's all part of my theory, I promise. You're still with me, right? And so, you know, we get to his final movie, A View to a Kill, and Roger Moore's James Bond retires after that one. You know, he is getting on a bit at that point. So they have to get a new James Bond. a new spy to fill that name and that number, 007. Enter Timothy Dalton. He carries on the James Bond name, does all the super spy stuff, apart from the second film, License to Kill. He went a bit off the rails there, didn't he? He had his license revoked, but he still went off to kill lots of bad guys. And I think at the end of that, they decided, that's it, we're done with James Bond's 007 or any of them, we're sacking him. And that's why we didn't see any more films from him. But you know, the world of espionage, it started getting more treacherous, and so they needed to reinstate a new James Bond. Enter Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye. Now there is a scene where the new M is saying that James Bond is part of an old era, like basically calling him a dinosaur. So that kind of knocks my theory out of the window a little, but I'm still going with it. So of course, Pierce Brosnan's James Bond carries on for another 4 films, and then he decides, I've had enough, I'm retiring. I mean, it was with Halle Berry, you know, he probably went off with her. And this is where my theory gets a lot more interesting. Or a little bit more weirder. That's the better way to say it. Because as far as anybody's concerned, Daniel Craig's James Bond, it was sort of like a bookend to bookend type story. Like it's its own story. Because when we first meet him, he's not actually 007, he's not a super spy as yet. But we've still got Pierce Brosnan's M. So that's what carries my theory here. Now, I start thinking, why is he called James Bond, but he's not actually 007 yet? I have an even bigger theory on that one, which goes into my theory. Hear me out. This is going to sound really, really silly, but it does work into my theory. Daniel Craig's James Bond is Sean Connery's James Bond's son. He's James Bond Jr. He says he was born in Scotland. We know that Sean Connery is Scottish, and the timeline sort of fits with that. Because we saw the first James Bond movie in 1962. Daniel Craig's first movie was 2006? Yeah. 5? Hold that thought. Yeah, I just went to have a look. Casino Royale was 2006. So that's 44 years after the first one. So Daniel Craig is definitely in that age bracket of being able to be the original James Bond's son. And so that's why we saw him before he became 007 and during his time of being 007, and then he retired, and then, I don't want to spoil it, what happened in the last one. And so going on that, they could easily incorporate that into the next film and say, oh look, we've got a new James Bond. He's fresh off the rack. Off the rack? What? He's new, let's put it that way, okay? And that's my other James Bond theory. So do any of you guys agree with me on this theory? Do you think it's nuts? Do you think I'm balmy? Or do you think there's actually a little bit of truth in there? And if so, thinking about it, do you think it actually works for the franchise? I don't know. It's how I like to see it anyway. But it's been playing in my head for so long that I had to film a video about it. And I promise I got no more other James Bond theories in my head yet. It's likely to happen. Anyway, I'm going to end the video now. All that's left for me to say is thank you for watching and subscribing if you have, and liking this video if you did. Until the next time, peace out. I've just realised I forgot to mention Felix Leiter, because he also had actors, or different actors, play him. So I'm just going to say that his character, the Felix Leiter persona, kept getting changed just like James Bond did. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.